This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, March 15, 2022. It's 9 a.m. This is just a workshop meeting this morning as we go over a couple of things in regards to looking at our budget and the numbers and everything like that. So as we get started this morning, I just want to say we've got the three commissioners are here, two sitting in the seat, one on the virtual wall. We've got staff joining us here this fine morning. We can do the Pledge of Allegiance. Might as well do that. So we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance real quick and then we'll get going.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, as you can see, there is no more mask mandate, so that would get rid of the hybrid version of the meetings. So in theory, people can still wear them. I don't have a problem with that. I just left mine in my truck. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. So, hey, it's good to see everybody. It felt like just days ago we were sitting in this general location. So with that being said, so look to staff and.
Alrighty. So I guess the purpose of today's meeting is really to hopefully give staff direction from the Board of Commissioners on where you would like us to prepare for resolutions or, well, anything that goes along with that, whether that's preparing for some sort of public hearing or testimony or marketing strategy or whatever as it relates to a possible rate increase and GSC increase. So just kind of as review, Michelle, can you show the one slide that had kind of the three rate strategies that we had talked about previously? Present that.
Even better. Oh, well. That concludes our feature.
We're working on it.
Yeah, no worries.
Here we go. At the very bottom. The one, like, right there. Yeah.
No, and this does go back. I know that these rate structure aspects were talked about with myself, Commissioner Koshy, and at that time was Commissioner Stevenson, as we had some really overview looking at what was coming down the pipeline, I guess we could say. And so now that we have a new Commissioner Wright, it's good to kind of all of us get on the same sheet of music and take a look at some of the possible rate strategies, because as we've seen and we've discussed during the utility board meeting with our city partners this last time, we kind of laid out, here's where we're at with these comprehensive plan updates you folks want us to plan for, and this is what it's going to cost. So I think it's really kind of been a reflection of trying to get an understanding where we're going to be, what is going to be the best way to tackle this without taking on debt, and then planning for the future.
So this slide, the only thing that's been added since last time you saw it was those donut breakdowns of where a customer's monthly rate would go to in 2022. So if we go with the study strategy, $90 per ERU per month, there's 0% that's going into capital, which would be a great little part of the donut. Blue is debt service, and then the orange color there is O&M. If we go with the moderate, the $99, then we get a little bit of money that can go over to capital. And then if we go with the more aggressive, $112 per month, we get a much larger allocation that can go over to capital. And that's really the driving difference between each of the models, is how much of that capital is going to have to come from debt service, which eventually is just going to grow the blue section of that donut, or how much can be saved for and paid for upfront out of rate.
That's kind of where we're at.
pretty much to spur that conversation hopefully for you guys.
And I think that, can kind of go back and give a little bit of history of it. There was a plan at one time where if the population targets were met by Snohomish County and each of the cities, by 2025, we were supposed to expand the plan. And it would have added a $30 million debt at that time, approximately, because we'd have to move the plan to a different phase and plan for that. We did see that a couple of years ago, that there was no way the targets were ever going to be made, because while the county did grow, the density that each of the cities kind of took on just really pretty much said, yeah, we don't see it happening. We had that discussion with the city. I would almost say it felt like 2 years straight, because every time they would see the old model, they kept thinking that that was going to occur. We said, no, no, no. We finally, I think, got it to the point where we all felt that, okay, it's not going to happen. But what did change in the meantime was comprehensive plans. The city's always been pretty proactive in the concept of trying to reallocate some of the resources that, like Everett or some of the other cities, weren't going to get. When I say resources, I meant population. So the county has to plan for a certain population, and every city is supposed to somehow divide up those numbers and plan for them. Everett was always on the kind of the lower side to a certain degree. Some of the other 5 cities like Linwood, Marysville, Arlington, we even accepted as a city when I was there, saying, hey, we could take on some of those population targets. And there was a sub-area plan reset along the 20th Street corridor where they were saying, hey, high density and commercial. While it did get some rezoning, I don't know if they've really been able to attract the high density like they want. The commercial, obviously, we finally see is coming to fruition, because there's going to be a Costco there in theory, and they're putting a lot of money towards that. But what has happened, as you can see under that steady, at the very bottom, we have this 38.4 million in new debt issuance just based on zoning changes throughout the city. And it's not just all city changes. There are, some of that stuff's got to take into account. We have to replace so much pipe each year, because obviously the last thing we want is the pipe around the lake to have a failure, because that could just be catastrophic until we get it fixed. So there's other things in there, but some of that change has been just due to zoning changes. And because we're not a land use, meaning we don't decide land use, we are at the mercy of trying to plan for that under our comprehensive. So it's a matter of trying to take on, and Kevin, correct me if I'm a little off base on some of this, just trying to hand it off, because I think what the board kind of adopted a couple of years ago was, let's just get out of the debt business, meaning we want to pay off our debt and not take any debt on. And our goal was always to kind of give the city at the end of this 2032, 33 and saying, okay, here's $100 million asset that's literally paid for you guys to do something with. Now, they think differently sometimes about debt than we do. So I think that's the crossroads we're at. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a good overview of the land use situation. And if you had more, there's been a lot of talk about growth in Lake Stevens over the past few years, and there's lots of opinions on it. From a strictly district point of view, the more residences that are here, the more people we have to spread the love amongst in terms of the revenue requirements. So, I mean, kind of, I guess a couple observations of these three. One is we still are having our developers pay as much as we can within being a Title 57 organization by, raising the connection fee, the GFC rate to whatever it is. We need to redo the calcs, I believe, based on the latest information, but there's that piece that's still here. There's the but it's just not enough. So we have these three options. I think these are very clearly articulated. I appreciate the work that's gone into them. I don't, to be candid, I don't like any of them. For two reasons. one, certainly the increases, but secondly, the debt issuance, as I kind of said before, I think debt needs to be taken on in a time frame in which the benefits of that capability are spread over. So long-term financing for long-term needs, in other words. And if it's something that's going to just be a reoccurring cost of doing business, like if we think there's almost in perpetuity of replacing pipe or upgrading pipe in the existing system, well then that probably is, I would feel it'd be more appropriate to have that reflected in rates. So I think the debt in this case isn't necessarily looking at use of debt. It's just looking at debt as a way to fund capital, regardless of whether the capital is new plant capability or whether it's the replacing pipe in perpetuity. I guess that's one question I would have. And then, so let me say one more thing, then I'll get off my little soapbox. I don't like the steady because we're gonna have pain every 2 years. The dam districts raising. I think that from just a communication strategy and from a ratepayer annoyance factor is high. And I also think it's hard on staff too with that strategy. And my comments about the debt. The moderate strategy, I could wrap my mind around that. I would almost, if I was going to look at it more of a, I think that maybe an option 1B on moderate would be, what would it look like with a 2-stage rate increase with no debt? So is it a 99 the first round? It's got to go to 115 in 2027. That would probably be the moderate one I'd want to maybe look at. What would those numbers be? And the aggressive, I mean, it's the rip the Band-Aid off approach. In concept, I like it the most. The 112 is pretty serious though. Now this also, I think we sized all of these for here's the plan all the way out until we merge with the city. And so in the last one, the far right, the aggressive, that debt service slowly comes down, which ends up coming over to O&M and makes up those increases as we anticipate inflation eating into that. So that kind of self-balances it, if I remember correctly. So there's some comments that I have about it. So I'm probably more of a moderate, B, option B with no debt, or the aggressive is probably where my head's at for those reasons. But let me stop there and see if any of that's helpful or just confusing, or if there's any questions back to me.
I personally would like aggressive off the table. I feel like in the timing of it, it's going to be catastrophic. I feel like we have protection for some low-income citizens in the city, with the, what do you call that?
Caring by sharing.
Caring by sharing. But then you've got this population, the average salary in Lake Stevens is actually not a lot. And so I feel like there's this population that it's really going to hurt, as I feel like it's inevitable the city is going to put a utility tax on it. And so to say it's 112 is, it's for the sewer district, but then I think the city will then tack on. I personally feel like they're waiting for this increase to put in the utility tax. And so I feel like that's a really hard bill for people to swallow. So I'd like to see the aggressive off the table, and we look more at a steady moderate. But I wish it wasn't inflation right now, and that maybe we could do the aggressive model. But I feel like the circumstances right now make it very difficult to present that to the citizens.
The one thing about presenting to the, just one comment though, the recent election around the school district bond issues, that in my mind was extremely aggressive in terms of what was presented, and it passed easily. And so, and it frankly dwarfs what we're talking here. Now, I'm not saying, that justifies it or anything else, but I'm saying from a message from the constituents on, hey, we're fine with 140 to 200% the cost of inflation over the long term for educating, and nope, we got it. And hey, McCleary, I understand that we've already funded that, but we're going to fund it some more. I mean, I don't know how to kind of justify that part of it. I'm still wrestling with it.
Yeah, it really kind of flew under the radar to a certain degree because I wasn't really sure how the school bond issues or their levy, I should say, but we've inherently always enjoyed that. And this is off topic because we're not a school district, but I think there are times that the citizens will recognize things that are essential, and that's what they're really trying to look at. Obviously, I look at the district and what we do as essential because we obviously don't want it bubbling up somewhere where it shouldn't. I get, aggressive. I know years ago when myself and Commissioner Koshi were battling for his spot, and there was always talk about just tearing that Band-Aid off because at that time, I think it was a $10 increase we were looking at back then. And then all of a sudden, at that time, I was like, wow, that's huge. And now I'm looking at the 112 and I don't know why it's not facing me as much as it absolutely should because it's $26. I guess what I look at, and the reason being sitting in this chair for a while when I see these debt structures under the steady and the moderate was, we had such a problem just trying to finance to save everybody money in this district before working with the city, because the city absolutely at the time, and hopefully maybe it's changed, but I'm not seeing it, would not go beyond or sign off on any new debt past 2033. And maybe that was a ploy by them at that time just to try to hold us in check. But we were trying to be able to reduce some of the debt load by looking at maybe extending and taking advantage of it. We couldn't get the previous administration. That seems to be, this new administration seems to follow the previous. So it's the current concerning part for me is if there was going to be a debt service taken on, do we even have support from the city? Because they just haven't been real consistent with us. What I want to do, I'd like to be able to have some surety as we look at certain things in the future. I know that if we went with a moderate, which, I'm swayable on all of this. I know that some might look at me as I was the more aggressive type all of a sudden, but it's the money that by not going aggressive, when we hit 2027 and have to look at an additional increase, it may not be the 110 at that time. It may all of a sudden be, where if we would have taken it all the way at 112, we could have saved ourselves some money in the inflation and everything there. But because we can't plan for certain projects to try to get it years earlier at a cheaper cost, it's now going to extrapolate out where it might be $116 in the future. So it is a decision we have to make. And obviously I see both sides. I mean, I want to make sure we're taking care of those that are less fortunate. And I do know that a lot of times in the city, we do have people that don't, even though the demographics here sometimes point that we're a very well-off community, that's not necessarily true. And so it is a balance. I mean, I kind of reflected both of those prices off of some of my friends that live in the area and have parents who live here maybe under, as far as they have fixed incomes and this and that. And I just said, tell me where the pain threshold is for somebody from there. And I said, and then one of them asked, well, is it under $150 a month? And I'm like, well, of course it is. Well, then I'm not too concerned. Now, that was an extreme, but even when I said, well, probably we looked at the most right now, maybe 112, and they just kind of looked at me and said, well, I'm not too concerned about that. Now, I get that that's easy to one person to say. We've got thousands of people we're dealing with. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, if we're looking at having staff look at a modified moderate B plus or something, we'll go there. I mean, there's a part of me that I think I just learned from Commissioner Cozy. Rip that Band-Aid off. If we jump to 112, we only have the pitchforks and torches coming at us one time for a while versus, you know, we've all lived through, even if it was 50 cents, I've had people just come out of the woodwork on it. And I get it, it's 50 cents and I get it. I hate charging for something if we don't have to, but we're at a crossroads and my concern is about that debt and knowing we haven't had a really good track record of having the city want to actually be a partner. I truly believe if they want to put a tax on our sewer, that dollar should go to pay for debt reduction or some of their capital costs, not to fund something else within the city government. But I can't get a guarantee out of them, and you know as well, you probably can't. So,
Right.
yeah.
So we
Unless
go,
we tied it,
though,
you know,
more-
there's going to be some discussions that come up, I would hope, in regards to our current legal challenges. There might be a way to bundle in an assurance into any type of resolution on the legal piece of it, but that's a big question mark. The one question, so the question is, what would it need, on a two-step moderate plan, what would it need to be? What would that next step need to be in 2027? That's one question. The other question I had was, what's our current, protection for low income folks? I think it was 200% of the poverty level. Just refresh us on that. And could one option we look at, regardless of what option we choose, could we increase because there's a rather moderate number of people, a dozen, or it's measured in dozens of people that qualify for that. Could we raise that threshold to be 300% of the poverty level or something, to be able to capture a larger number of folks that would be, disproportionately hit by whatever we do?
So currently the rate reduction program is using 400% of the federal poverty level, which mimics what the Lake Stevens Food Bank was doing at the time that we adopted that. There's 30 customers that are currently on reduced rate.
And what's the number? What is the federal do we know what the federal poverty level is, what that 400% means in terms of income?
I don't remember off the top of my head all of the categories. It depends on the household size. So for example, 400% for a family of 4 is about 111,000 per year.
Wow.
So it's quite high.
Wow.
Comparable to other folks that are around doing the same sort of program.
Wow. Okay. All right. And that's how it is currently.
That's how it is currently.
So family of 4, 110 grand a year, I can have it indexed back to whatever, $75 or something?
$77.40. They get a 10% discount.
Okay, so one option we could explore is you could index it back to our current rate, 86, have it go up, but not go up to whatever it might go up to. That would be one option. That's a lot higher level than I thought. So, okay. Do we know on moderate what it would be if we did a two-stepper with no debt? I probably could back into that number on the 21 million, but.
I actually don't know off the top of my head, because a lot of that debt issuance is going for the capital cost. So if we turn that dial sort of thing, and that 2027 timeframe hits the Hartford industrial area projects. So if those get delayed, that debt issuance could be delayed. So we might not necessarily need that whole amount, since 13.3 million of that lump sum is really for the Hartford area.
why can't we get that off the table?
Well, part of it is that we agreed to it. So it's been in the comp plan
Okay.
for a very long time. And then it's also in the agreement between us and the city for the annexation.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If on that one, you want the Hartford project, you want to take on debt, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and I agree with you, Kevin. I think that there has to be something to look at. I think that's where it has to come into, when the city and the district way back in the day decided to do this joint venture and build a new plant eventually, there was actual equity built into each side was supposed to work towards something. I don't know how over the years it just morphed to equity meant the district took on all the responsibilities and debt, and the city wasn't paying part of their share. Because that's where I have some consternation. I mean, it's not like we're going to be like this forever. There is an end date. We're supposed to come together, but it's not like we're sharing in this debt. It's almost like that debt is yours until we decide to absorb you. I mean, that's the way I feel. And it's like, well, if you want to absorb us, you should be this should be something you're sketching out in your notebook also, because your debt is my debt is your debt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Because we always had a thought at 2025, we would have to go out and take on debt, issue bonds to build the second phase of the plant. And that kind of just faded away because we knew to meet the targets. Now, the difference back then is that was an agreement with the city and us. All of a sudden, it seems like the 2027 or, this Harper thing is no longer agreement between us. It's kind of like, yeah, we want you to do it, but we're not willing to pay for it. I don't like that. I think that there has to be a better negotiation in that aspect, that if they decide to do that, this is how we're going to do it. And if that means they're going to add a utility tax to our $99 to pay for their share, that's their prerogative, but that's what it should go for.
Well, if we look at the moderate, then if there's 13 million of that's Hartford, I would call that 21 million. Here's what that 21 million is currently slated for. However, the big asterisk on it is we might need to repurpose that capital for ecology mandates, right? Because if we come down the road and it's, we aren't hitting the targets and this and that, and we need to do some hocus pocus with the plant that's going to be a $10 million capital need to be able to make sure we can meet our obligations of our permit, then I think that's the asterisk. And by 2027, we'll know whether, that will have settled, I hope, and not have just another round, but the ecology piece will settle for a while, I would assume, in the next 5 years. We'll certainly have a better view of it than we do currently. And I think then you got to have the open conversation about the capital. It might need to be repurposed. We can still say we're going to have 21 million in capital, but it might not be for the same needs because they might need to get reprioritized. And I think maybe that's the way to start boxing in the conversation. So it's a zero-sum game. It comes down to this is what the rate plan looks like to get us to where you have the keys to the district. But there's going to be, in order to be able to meet that rate plan, this is the bound amount of capital that we're going to be able to work with, and the bound amount of debt, therefore, because it is going to be for long-term benefit. We're going to have to make some choices, and so when we talk about this, at some point we're going to make a decision or start narrowing in on this. Well, we're going to have to involve our PR folks and have a communication plan and talking points and blah blah. We're going to have to go through that whole change management process in terms of communicating this thing. That can be part of it. And I assume part of it will be we'll come back to the city and say, all right, we got 3 choices, or maybe we narrow it down to 2 choices. It's moderate, it's aggressive. It's bound by capital. The capital is bound in there by this dollar amount. Depending on ecology, we might have to make trade-offs. Need to go into that with our mind wide open. Are you on the same page as that? Let's also talk about any utility tax. These are very aggressive rates to be able to do this in this fashion. It assumes that there's not going to be something applied. We'd like to have that be part of our joint communication plan about this new rate structure. So anyway, I guess I'm getting more comfortable with, moderate with there being some debt if it's long-term pieces, as long as it's bound. But I still would like to see the option without the debt, and we could bound it that way and say there's no need for any new debt, but it's bound by this amount. And here's, I don't like the idea of Hartford just being in the rate structure and the aggressive. We get Hartford by doing the aggressive. I think that's the wrong message, because I don't think that's a high priority relative to ratepayers paying for it.
So my problem with the aggressive, I think there is absolutely no way that you can say there's no additional rate increase.
Oh, you can't say it. You can say it's our best estimate. You can say whatever happy words you want, but because you don't know what ecology is going to do to you. You don't know whether inflation is going to be 10% the next 5 years. You're right. You're 100% right.
No, and I think that that could have taken us to the end of our term as a district, but it wouldn't be forever in the city aspect once becomes a department. I think the big thing on the moderate looking at it, I think the big thing for that, the debt, that has to be a conversation, just as if we were doing a second phase of the plant with the city. I think that the city has to have some ownership of this in there. Our obligation was to be able to move forward on this, but if we're not going to take a stance of making obviously real aggressive, which I think the aggressive is fading, you still have to plan something, because I've worked with the city over the years. I know how sometimes they get into a pinch. I mean, when this whole plant was being designed way back in the day, the city was supposed to collect an additional certain dollars to pay for their share of the upgrade when we got there. And when it came, the system didn't have theirs. The additional dollars that were put on top of the rate fee and supposedly collected by the city never materialized. The district, when it finally did move forward, it did the city a solid by letting it saying, hey, annex this piece of property into the city limits, and you're going to get $1 million worth of sales tax on the construction out of it, because rather than give it to Snohomish County, we'll give it to the city since it's one community. That's where the district has bent over backwards over the years to make these things happen. And I just don't see that coming forward on the city, because it's generally in a pinch. I mean, it doesn't have.
What about
Yes.
what about this? What about moderate? So the other capital that's in that 21 million, I assume, is lift stations and things we.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what about this? What if we did a moderate? We do 99 essentially this year sometime, whatever, June, whatever, and then the additional one, that rate in 2027 that we forecast, we could communicate it up front. No one will remember it, but still, I think it would show more comprehensive planning, which would be wise for us to do. Whatever that dollar amount is, and it's probably north of 110, to get us to everything in the covering everything that needs to be done in the 21 except Hartford or ecology requirements. And that is the debt issuance in 2027. So 99 now, whatever it is, 112, 113, whatever it is in 2027 that we're forecasting and communicating, and then 13.5 million for new debt service in 2027 for Hartford or for ecology requirements, or not issued. And so we bookmark, we minimize the pain up front in terms of moderate. We give ourselves some flexibility, because there are no promises that 112 on the aggressive would be the end all be all. Give us some flexibility and have the conversation there, but we forecast it and we put it out there. And we have now some hooks to where we come back to the conversation around Hartford, and is that really more important? Or if ecology overshadows it, we have that hard conversation. And at least then the debt issuance with our city's partners is for either a need that they are promoting, or it's a need that is required from ecology, which would, and you're also much closer to where they're going to have the keys to the district. And so how about that as a framework of a path forward?
No, I think that's a good, I mean, I think that's a good framework to get us to that point, because that's got to spell out to them these debts that are going to be taken on, what they're going to be for. I mean, I think ecology is still an open book, because I know that GNO was still doing some work.
Yeah, so in 2025, that ACART analysis, which was the all known and reasonable technologies that are available to us in order to get to that new limit that ecology is going to set. That report is due in 2025. And so we don't know until that report is done how much sort of capital infrastructure we may need to implement in order to reach that requirement. So 2025 definitely would tell us, hopefully, what.
Well, my feeling would be on that, if we went the moderate with a, in that rate proposal, what that's also doing is doing some repairs and capital improvements that need to be done. But I think that there should be dollars put towards ecology right now versus waiting until 2027 to say, okay, because we don't know, what is that? If the Hartford thing increased to 16 million by that time, and all of a sudden ecology comes out and our fix is $9 million, we've really blown the budget. And so I think that if we are planning to a certain degree on the back end right now in that rate, but really putting that, hey, ecology is a very big unknown that we're all going to be bound to, regardless, not putting Hartford into place is a promise that the city and the district will have some litigation over if they feel that that's for them. But you don't get to make those kind of decisions with ecology, because with them, it's like, here's the playbook. You don't get to change it, or you pay $20,000 a day for every day you're out of compliance. I mean, that's how they operate. So I think that we should just at least look at getting a guesstimate to a certain degree on ecology, or at least putting some dollars away right now just for that. I'd rather put it away and then find out, hey, we don't need as much, and then we can even put it in there. So, but I mean, the debt on Hartford, yeah, that's the big thing. That's something we do. So.
Do we have a couple million in there for anticipated ecology in the moderate?
No. So we have in there to do the ACART analysis and the reports that are required, but that only amounts to about $600,000. So until we know what kind of program that is that we're going to need, it's not built in there yet.
Okay, well then let's build that into the rate structure. If 99 is kind of, I don't know, if 99 feels like the maximum palatable initial bite, that's moderate, I guess. If we use 99 as the first step, then what does the second step need to be to kind of address what Dan's talking about, of some amount of money, a couple $1 million in anticipation of ecology, and then you push any big bite after the 25 reports out in terms of debt, and a decision at that point to take debt on or not take debt on, and Hartford or ecology or what have you. And part of the communication process here would be to have the city in lockstep with, understanding, not just understanding and not just agreeing to, but agreeing to with, through the utility committee probably, having it ratified in an appropriate way, so there's no confusion on what was agreed to, what was the direction, what was the strategy, what was the plan, what was the contingency plan, and what decisions are facing us in the coming years.
So we have a utility meeting a week from today. Are we kind of prepared to present to them what we're talking about with moderate and stuff?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think if we could just break, it's going to be a high level, because again, Hartford is an unknown, because the costs today are not probably going to be truly reflective tomorrow when they want it done. And the same thing with ecology. But I think that we have to get a message to them, either the utility committee or the entire city council as a whole, to understand. I mean, I think the conversations I think that the commissioners had prior, was we're trying to give you a system that's debt-free and is in decent shape. I mean, it's great. It's turnkey operation. I mean, we can kick the can down the road like we inherited from them in the late 90s, and they're going to be in the same world of hurt. But that's not what we want to do. I think that the board has kind of adopted, hey, we want the best system we can afford without being the Taj Mahal or just being, the budget model that's going to fail in a year. So I just, we all have, a piece of this game because we live in the community. We want the system to work.
And those numbers, look at the 99 increase, that's a 15% increase on a year where we had 7+% inflation after 5 years of 0 rate increases.
Yeah.
I'll defend that all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like raising rates, but 5 years, no rate increase, 2021, 7+% of inflation, and we're talking about a 15% rate increase across those 6 years.
Well, if we would have taken a $5 increase every year since the 5 years, we'd already been at $100 and something. So
Right.
we've tried to defer all this because obviously that's not our point. I mean, I think that we're trying to make it reasonable. I mean, I don't want people to use the sanitary system as their next place to dispose of everything at $112 a month. If it goes down, I'm flushing it because I pay more than that in my garbage. So, I mean, I've seen people do some strange things. I mean, I think that staff has seen tires and sofas stuffed in some of our manholes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but I think that if we concentrate or at least give staff a direction to look at the moderator and try to go from there, that's probably going to be our most palatable,
So so 99, then the open question is, what does the rate increase need to be in 2027 in terms of us projecting, not saying it'll happen, but projecting. And what does that rate need to be to whittle down the 21.4 to whatever Hartford is, or ecology additional needs, and build in a couple $1 million for anticipated ecology on top. Is that the numbers we want to see on the moderate?
I think so. I mean, if we know that the study is going to be $600,000+, I couldn't imagine actually what it's going to cost to do the fix. I mean, that's the scary part. I guess looking at the other board members, I mean, are we comfortable? Are you comfortable? I mean, obviously, we're not here to make a decision because it's a workshop, but is the comfort level at the $99 versus the $112 versus the steady at $90?
I'm fine with I'm comfortable with the 99. Like I said, I'm comfortable with the 99. It's 15% increase on 5 years of no increases with 7% plus inflation the last year. I'm comfortable with the 99 and communicating that to anybody who would ask. I think we should project what, the next, what the rate structure looked like from here to when the city takes the keys. I think that's a healthy and shows a longer range planning. I think that's good. It also gives staff direction on what we're marching towards and our finances to bounce up against that. And I think it should reflect, to your point, Dan, some additional dollars, call it 2 million, maybe that's the wrong number, but 2 million of ecology related items. And I think the rate in that 2027 also should reflect reducing that 21 proposed debt service to just Hartford or ecology, so that we force a decision and a conversation at that point in time when we have more data at 2025 when we have the study. So that's the moderate I'm wrapping my mind around.
Okay.
And then I think I'd also mention, we have to do this forecasting each time we do budget season. So the model changes.
Oh, yeah.
Each time we have more information, since one assumption is built on the next year, right? So even though we model out, like to your point, we model out to 2041, but because there's so many assumptions in there,
Right.
every year could be different if we had another 10% inflation year.
Well, and not that I'm an advocate for any of the options that we have. I think they're all good ones, but the one benefit to the aggressive model would be that there's flexibility later to finance any shortfalls with smaller debt that would make it a little bit more achievable to be able to put your hat on and no further rate increases. So if we fall out of line with our comp plan or things cost more, we can finance future capital projects with smaller issuance of debt. But yeah, that's the only benefit that I can see.
No, and I would agree that, I think what the aggressive one is up there. But of course, I've received every freaking utility bill there is under the sun, and none of them are that cheap, it seems like. But I think what gets a lot of people, and they'll really clamor towards it, says no additional. And that is misleading because it wouldn't be. But I mean, it does buy us better options and services, because I think we've got a system that's constantly aging. We found that with the plant as we starting to find things that are failing just because they're obsolete and we can't find vendors to fix them. So then you're taking on, a whole new project that you didn't anticipate to spend $300,000 on or more. So the moderate gives us some flexibility, but not what the aggressive does, and it's tough. Budgeting is a tough thing. Forecasting is even worse. And I know that we try to go out forever, but the reality is we know even our own personal budgets of it's generally 2 to 3 years out. That's the best you're really going to get, if that a true cost. So, but I think moderate puts us right in there where I think if staff does work on that, that's probably more palatable for the city and some of those. And I'm even open if we can have another joint meeting sometime in the future if the city wanted us, just to get a better understanding, because we do talk with just the utility committee, but there's a difference between having the utility committee come back, you know how it is. I mean, unless you're sitting in the audience and hearing it from the horse's mouth, things sometimes get changed slightly, not on purpose to deceive or anything like that, but people's perceptions of what they hear coming out. So I think sometimes if we kind of lay it out there. So yeah, I mean, I still want to roll it out and have at least a session for the public to weigh in on some of this too, because that is one thing that we need to at least reach out and say, hey folks, give us some comments. We're having a meeting.
I think there's a whole communication plan around this. That isn't a quick box check. I think there's probably a whole nother, once we align on what we want to do, then I think we have another session or two to talk about how we're going to go about doing it. So yeah, I agree there.
Yeah. I just, the sooner we start making these mechanisms click into place, we're that much closer to succeeding to it. And what I mean is, like, if we wait 5 months to start collecting a rate of $99, we're losing out on that in that long term. Not to say that we're in a big rush, but some of these models take into account, if you're not collecting the dollar today, you're losing out on it tomorrow. So
I'd want to make a move by June, just to drive a stake in the ground. I mean, that's where my head's at. Let's do what we need to do this month, next month. Let's have a month plus to communicate out, and then let's get on with it.
okay. Comfort level, thoughts?
I think June is a good plan. I feel like a public meeting would be
absolutely
excellent. I love the idea of a communications plan. So.
And even having one-on-ones with our fellow council members in town. That's what it might take, is us reaching out to, besides the utility meeting, because I know sometimes some of the council members are busy, and just maybe sitting down and having that coffee time with them to kind of get their thoughts. Because I know a couple of the council members, kind of follow some of it. So I think it's just goodwill also reaching out. So. What are your thoughts from us? Are we giving you enough to
Yeah, I have enough to
make
move
it
forward and
successful?
try and meet your expectations.
Oh, you'll always meet our expectations. I just don't know, I mean, this is the tough one. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because if you actually look at all three of those options there, I think prior to this meeting, each commissioner had one of those options and not all three were the same. I can say that with probably an absolute certainty.
Now,
I mean, I think that, I take heat for it, but I think I was more the aggressive. I think Commissioner Koshy's moderate. I think you were steady.
I'm still steady.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
No, and that's it. I think it's just a matter of taking a look around there. And, I mean, there's lots of times we're not going to agree on that. And there's nothing saying if you're not in agreement and that doesn't go for you, don't, sell your values or your integrity short to say, I can't vote for that. I can't agree to it. I mean, this is how we work it. If there's not enough votes to go to moderate, we start at steady. If there's not enough votes to go to aggressive, we go to moderate. I mean, that's how I want each of us to feel empowered enough to be able to say, hey, this is where I'm at, and we work from there. Because I've been in the game a few years, so I get used to it after a while, but I understand when we get new people coming in, it's a tough one. This is nothing personal. I don't judge people based on, I'm going to get a lot of flack. There's a lot of people in the community that look to me and they're going to think, what in the world did you hit your head coming into the building that day? So I'm sure Commissioner Koshy will probably feel the same way. And to a certain degree, you'll be able to say, hey, I don't know those two.
yeah, and there's not, and just to back up that statement, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a dissenting vote. If this might end up going 2-1, and that's okay. There's no, so I think that's okay. And I want to make sure June gives enough time for Mary and the team up front to buy enough Kevlar suits. So
That's right. I think the most valid point though is, Kevin, your statistics of the school district, the 15% is just a 15% increase. Inflation, when you look at those actual numbers, it's more realistic.
Yeah. It's still going to be a tough one. I think that the community is going to see a lot of increases in the next year, that it's easy sometimes to vote but not know exactly what you're getting.
Right.
Especially with school district levies at times. Not take anything from them, but I mean, we do it with the fire district, we do it with the school district, we do it in the city. There are some taxes that obviously we don't have to have a public vote on.
Yeah.
Sewer increases like this, we don't have to go to the public. That's what they empowered the board to do. And we try to make that decision as best we can. And we live or die per se by that decision. If they hate me because I did it, I'll find out soon enough when it comes to either election or something else. And it was like, so long, farewell.
Right.
If they hate you over this, they never really loved you to begin with.
You got some good one-liners.
So I think it gives some, hopefully it'll give some, and then we can take it to our city partners in a couple weeks to be able to kind of bring it back to them.
Well, so how long will it take to, just so now I'm clicking in my corporate mode. So how long will it take to do the moderate prime option that we talked about, to gin that up and just send it out, maybe an email for the three of us to look at?
24, 48 hours. You'll have it before the week.
Okay, then I think I would feel, so if we have that in hand, and we have a city powwow, a utility, is it next week?
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Tuesdays are so popular. Okay, so then I think we would be in a position to be able to share that, and this would be the second or third time that we've done that. Get some feedback, start, going down that path. And then if if the stars are aligning, then I think we go full communication plan. And we might want to involve the PR firm that we used. You might, spending a couple dollars there to get it right, I think might be money well spent.
Well, I would agree. I think that if we start looking at that now, because we are gonna have some naysaying, I think. And so I
We're
think
gonna
we
do
have
something, so.
consistent talking of points, what we're really looking at and what's going on. I mean, I don't want us to get sideways because we're not consistent in what we're talking in that context. But I think after the utility meeting with the city folks, I think it's imperative, I guess, to a certain degree, if we all want to, as board members, reach out to our respective city council partners. We could let the staff put our names in a hat, or the names of the hats that aren't on the utility committee, and maybe assign each commissioner to reach out and say, hey, see if you can touch base with Councilman X, Y, or Z and have a cup of coffee and talk about it. And I think that's part of it, along with our communication, aspect. So they're on, because they're going to get hit up too. I mean, how many times people automatically think, because all they see is Lake Stevens, they don't realize it's a district. I mean, it used to be a fire, every time the fire district did something, the city got yelled at. So it's just, we can be consistent, because I don't want them to be blindsided any more than I want to be blindsided. So
You're so nice.
Nope, I think they end up being part of that communication plan, not just a recipient of the communication plan, but a dutifully assigned participant in that communication plan.
yeah. Well, it was good. It was a good meeting. I think good chatting with everybody, kind of getting an understanding. I mean, I think we're still there. I think we've narrowed it down. I mean, we're at the lower end of the scale, so I think that's a good thing. I mean, like I said, I think the big thing's gonna be communicating that the city's got to be more of a partner in regards to Hartford by 27 or X, whatever it is, especially with the debt like that, because really that was approaching our treatment plant upgrade years ago costs, even though we know that would have been 30 million by this time. But yeah, so. Well, anything else from the fellow members? Yes, no.
No, it's great seeing y'all.
Yeah, we got to see
Can't
you
wait
twice
to get
by the week. It's not even been a week. It was like last Thursday we were here, right? Yeah, so our weather changed. Yours got better.
Yeah, it's I've been looking at the weather there, and it's a good reason to be here.
Looking forward to come back.
I miss it though. It's I always maintain it's what you grew up with, that kind of brands you in terms of where your deal is. And I still don't mind a little rain because I've had it for 53 years. So makes me enjoy the sun, but I do miss it, getting up and seeing blue skies every day, after a while, it's time to come home.
Stop. I cannot even relate.
I'll tell you, I'll send you guys the link to the security camera that looks out over the courtyard, so you can just kind of.
Yeah.
Your public enemy number one.
Well, I guess with that, we could entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you.
Take care, y'all. It's good to see you.